Welcome to this tutorial on the administrative fee calculator for the Monarch CCAA. We're going to walk through the calculator that's available on the CCAA toolkit and some of the important things that you want to know as you're thinking about your administrative fee for the participation in the CCAA. So to start with, I'm pulling up here the workbook, again, that's available on the CCAA toolkit. And this workbook has a number of slides. Here you can see at the bottom the first 4 on the left side that basically provide background information on the administrative fee and how we've gotten to the calculation method that we've used. So here in this first slide called Index and Disclaimer, this is where we again have summarized each of the worksheets within this workbook with a brief description, and then have included some additional information here as I scroll down, again on kind of what is being done on each of those slides, and then some additional disclaimer information here to the right. Again, always a good idea when you're calculating the administrative fee to work with UIC if needed. If you have any questions, we will also recalculate the administrative fee as part of our application review process. And so again, the final costs, again, will be determined as part of that application review that UIC is performing. If we move to the next tab here, this outlines number of considerations that have been taken into account in the development of the fee structure. So this has additional background information that you can find as far as, again, how the fee is calculated, the various deductions and other factors that have been built into the fee, as well as some additional information on, again, the basis of the fee primarily being the costs per acre in terms of adopted acres that are enrolled, as well as the base fees. The next tab, decision factors, this walks through also the background as far as how we balance the variety of considerations that we took into account in developing the fee, and again, essentially how we have weighed the various aspects of what we're trying to accomplish with this administrative fee, balancing size considerations, differences in operations, and so forth. And again, there's some additional information here regarding some of the constraints and the trade-offs that have been taken into account. Next tab here includes really a lot of the background data that's used in the calculator itself. So here you can see the sliding scales of costs per adopted acres. Again, all of these tables are basically being referenced in the calculator tab. Here's some definition on the differences in base fee, which we'll be looking at when we get to the calculator tab here in just a second. You can see we have 3 applicant types: a small contributor, which we define as an applicant that has less than 500 adopted acres. An early supporter is an applicant that was involved in the development of the CCAA, particularly an organization that contributed during phases 1 or 2 of the CCAA development. And then we have a standard applicant, which is, again, essentially kind of the catch-all for any other applicant that doesn't fall into that small contributor or early supporter category. So again, just helpful reference there for you as you're looking at the various options on the next tab. And again, here you can see just the ongoing reference tables for the calculator itself. So then we get to the actual calculator tab here, Partner Calculator. This is where you're going to be inputting the information to calculate your fee. And specifically, you're going to be inputting data into the blue cells. So you start here up at the top, entering your organization name. For good reference here, we have a place for you to input your total enrolled lands. And we'll have a separate tutorial that will be going through, again, how you determine those enrolled lands that you'll be enrolling. Here we have the selection of, again, the different type of applicants. So the small contributor, the early supporter, or a standard applicant, which again, those references are on the sliding scale references tab. Here's a place to indicate if your organization contributed to phase 3 of the CCAA development. This is important because if you've contributed at the $5,000 level or greater, then your application fee will be waived. So that's taken into account in the calculation here. So you can just indicate yes or no. And then here in cell C11 is where you indicate your adopted acres target. So again, this is the calculated minimum of adopted acres that you're committing to enroll and maintain in Monarch habitat as part of your CCAA enrollment. So this cell right here, this number is really one of the primary factors in determining your administrative fee. From there, for the purposes of this initial administrative fee calculation, you can just copy that same number down here into cell C15. And similarly, particularly for the first year's administrative fee, again, assume that you'll be meeting that adopted acres target. In future years, you can potentially exceed that target. So if you exceed the adopted acres in a given year, then there's actual discounts that can be taken into account, again, for subsequent years. But just for the simplicity's sake and for our initial administrative fee calculations, you can assume the same adopted acres value. So as we scroll down here, again, there's a table here for future years to capture any implementation of supplemental measures. And as you can see, there's an available discount per supplemental measure. So you can indicate here if you are implementing particular supplemental measures. And then you would input the sum of those discounts over here in the deduction calculator. So we scroll to the right. You can see the deduction calculator here has places for you to identify the percent that you've maybe exceeded your adopted acres target in future years. Again, that doesn't affect your year 1 administrative fee calculation, so those cells are grayed out. From the table to the left, you can also input the discounts for supplemental measures that have been implemented. And again, those would only apply after year 1. And then for some organizations who applied to the CCAA as part of our early enrollment incentive period, we had available discounts if you had submitted your application by the end of April or by the end of May. But from here on out, you can just select after May 31st, 2020, and there isn't a discount that's applied for early enrollment. So once you've inputted the information into the deduction calculator, you can scroll back here and down, and you can see finally here starting in row 27, we have the calculation showing kind of all of the incremental pieces here that have gone into the calculation of the administrative fee. And again, details on these values can be found on these previous tabs, particularly the sliding scale references tab. So all of these gray cells will be completed automatically based on the information that you input in the cells above. It will show your, oops. I don't know how I did that, but okay, for the sake of our conversation, it shouldn't matter. So the discounts here will show in green. There is a maximum 30% discount several supplemental measures and maybe you had an early enrollment discount, the sum of those discounts will cap at 30%. So the maximum percentage you'll see is 30%. That will then show as a calculated deduction in terms of dollars, and then your final administrative fees will be shown here in the far right, so column N. And this again will be your year 1, year 2, year 3, year 4, and year 5 administrative fees. So those are provided for planning purposes. You can actually pay for your administrative fee in multiple years if that works well for budget or planning purposes, or you can pay your individual administrative fee on an annual basis as part of the annual renewal. So that's a quick rundown in terms of how the calculator works. We have additional information on the CCAA toolkit, including frequently asked questions about administrative fees, how the fees are being used, and additional explanation that might be helpful as far as having internal conversations regarding the administrative fees. And of course, don't hesitate to reach out to UIC if you have any questions in terms of how the calculations are done or using this calculator or related tools. So again, thanks for joining for this tutorial, and please check out the other tutorials that we have on the toolkit. Thanks.